Right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our AMA session. Today we'll be joined by Gynvael. So, would you start by introducing yourself?
Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Gynvael Coldwind. I'm, kinda into computers, basically, and into security and programming and other stuff. I guess, more seriously, I'm the creator and longtime captain, now ex-captain of Dragon Sector, which is one of the top CTF teams. And I'm also, I work at Google as a manager slash information security engineer in one of the security teams.
Cool. So, let's start with the first question. So, the first question we got here is, do you know any series of Linux x64 exploit development tutorials?
Do I know any? No, not really. It's kind of like the problem. I'm getting a lot of questions like this, can I recommend a book or like to learn something, or can I recommend a series of tutorials or anything? I would totally love to recommend it, but the problem is that I actually learned this stuff some time ago, and after some time, after a couple of years in this, you basically stop looking at tutorials at all, which means I totally lost touch with any kind of tutorials at all, almost, apart from the ones I make. So, yeah, apologies. I just cannot answer this question. I have no idea.
That's perfectly fine. That's how you get by being in the cybersecurity environment for a few years, I suppose.
Yeah.
Mm. The second question we got here is how do you get into hacking and CTFs?
It's a good question. So, I guess into hacking, since there was a pretty long time which separated me getting into hacking and getting into CTFs. I guess I was on some IRC channel. For folks who don't know what IRC is, it's basically like Discord, but developed like 30 years ago or so. And it's not as fancy, doesn't have voice chats. Anyway, so on one of the channels, basically, one of my friends joined and gave us a link to a series of somewhat security-related puzzles with JavaScript in the background. And then to the next size, basically what we would call war games, right, like today. And that was super interesting for me. I got hooked up instantly. At that time, I was already doing programming for several years. So, basically, I put that on top of programming, and I really enjoyed. But then like the next thing came, and the next, and the next. And some years after that, I spotted that there are some competitions in the hacking scene, basically, in my country. But that was, I think, around 2003, 2004. And so I tried to participate in some. I even won some, but they were mostly, one player only. Then first CTF started to appear at conferences around like 2008, 9, I guess, at least in my country. So I participated with some friends. We usually won, but it was fun. And then around 2012, I discovered that there is this thing called ctftime.org, which is basically an aggregate site, a ranking site for CTFs. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm creating a team. I got in touch with Euro, my good friend, with Adam E, who I also like competed against in other CTFs and individual CTFs. And yeah, we created Dragon Sector, and that's basically what hooked me up for good.
Cool. When you go on ctftime.org and you see like your team so high up, you're like, I wish I was that high. But that obviously comes because you guys have a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge in this field, so of course.
Yeah, that was the plan. I always like to say that was the plan. Like, the idea was, yeah, let's create a team to basically be on the top. And it took us a couple of years, I guess like 1.5 years, but that was until the first time we got top one on CTF time.
So our next question is, what is your dream job if you're not doing it already? If you're doing your dream job, is everything as imagined?
So this is an excellent question, actually. I don't know how to answer it. So it's like this. As you probably know, it changes like as years progress, it kind of changes, right? So initially, when I was I don't know, like 10 years old or like 15 years old, I always thought I would be into game development. I would go and be a game developer because that's what always fascinated me. But then in the end, I finished in security because that is what fascinated me. And yeah, I moved from one company to the other. Then I ended up at Google, which I'm actually really happy about. So yeah, I guess if I would imagine my ideal job, right, it would be a job where I can still learn new things, which is, I guess if I would now select a perfect job for me, it would be something related to security research cross space exploration. But I don't think there is a position for that yet. So we'll see in the future.
I don't think SpaceX is hiring right now, but maybe.
Yeah, and I don't think SpaceX is hiring folks who don't have US citizenship. So that's another thing. But yeah, we'll see in a couple of years.
We'll see. We'll see. Would you consider doing YouTube for as a full-time job?
So that's another good question. I did consider it a couple of times. The problem is that I guess it's a little too niche. I'm trying to basically provide content which is for folks who are on like advanced, intermediate levels. So and that's not a lot of people in the end, if you think about it, right? So if that would supposed to generate enough money for me to survive, to be able to buy bread, to eat, to pay the rent, and so on, for me and my family, right? That's probably the math just doesn't add up here. I would love to do that full time, but yeah, probably that will not work.
Yeah,
Not on its own, at least.
it's a pretty special or a niche audience that we have. So it's the quantity that really matters in the entertainment business, I suppose, right?
Yeah, it's a complicated thing, right? Because, well, I guess ads is not the way for small channels to actually be able to afford themselves. I mean, I was fully transparent with my funds so far, and I'm currently at like minus $7,000 or something on my channel. If I take into what I've spent on the channel versus what I've earned.
Ouch.
So yeah, so if I would go full time with this math, yeah, that would just not work.
No, it's an investment to get good equipment and such.
Yeah, for example, right?
Mm. Let's see. The next question here is, what other hobbies do you have, if any?
Oh, if any. No, I actually do have some. So, well, depending on the question is what other hobbies do I have? I guess that assumes I have already, like, my hobbies are related to security and programming, which is true, of course. Apart from that, I like books, like reading books, and especially like fantasy, science fiction, something less thinking, more action style, actually. Since I always joke that I do a lot of thinking during the day, and then after when I basically get home, I like to grab a book which doesn't require me to think a lot about it. I do like manga and anime, especially anime, I guess, and I do like hiking, especially that I live in a pretty nice place that offers a lot of hiking opportunities.
So a follow-up
Oh,
question
and
is, yeah,
also actually computer games. Yeah, I always basically enjoyed playing computer games the same as enjoyed programming and security.
that's cool to hear. So a follow-up question for that is, what's your favorite book and game then?
Uh, okay, so book. That's always a hard question because I have so many good books that I really like.
Maybe narrow to top 10 at least.
Okay, so I'm going to give you some random books. I really enjoyed Harry Dresden books. These are like somewhat fantasy, but in current times, and it's like a detective thriller story on one side and fantasy on the other. I really really like them. I totally enjoyed Dune from Frank Herbert. Then there are some Polish authors. Oh, for example, you might heard about Witcher series, and yeah, I was. But basically, it was coming out when I was in like primary school. So I got hooked up into reading basically thanks to Witcher series. And for the game, I guess most time I've spent on StarCraft, and this is my old favorite forever. Apart from that, I do enjoy playing Counter-Strike, but I guess StarCraft was a little more fun for me.
And StarCraft is more strategic, I feel, but that might be because I'm not that good at Counter-Strike.
So I actually look at it like this. StarCraft was more of a single player game usually. Sometimes you could play, well, I played most of my matches like with my partners, my team partners, for example, with Euro. And 2v2 is not really a thing in StarCraft. StarCraft is a 1v1 game. That being said, Counter-Strike is more, you have a team and you play team versus team, and I actually enjoy that aspect of Counter-Strike, really. There is actually quite an amazing amount of strategy and tactics involved in Counter-Strike on a certain level. But yeah, of course, like StarCraft is a little more about that actually than CS can ever be.
Of course. So there's a question from the chat that asks you if you prefer playing terrorist or counter-terrorist when you're playing CS:GO.
So I actually prefer City, like Counter-Terrorists. Though that being said, I'm a player that plays only one map. I only play Mirage, so and I think City is slightly easier than other. So yeah, I'm biased towards the map basically.
That's perfectly reasonable. So the next question we got here is how and why did you start Dragon Sector?
So I guess I kind of already mentioned this, right? I started it because I found out that ctftime.org exists, and I always liked, rankings and so on. I sometimes joke about it, but in the end, yeah, that's basically what drove me. So, and how? Well, I already also mentioned it, that I sent a message to Mateusz Jurczyk, to Juru, to Adam E, and yeah, and we basically created this thing. Well, the name, I wanted to say I created the name Dragon Sector, but that's not really true, because I launched some random heavy metal band name generators, and I randomized them and like clicked randomize a couple of times, and I got Dragon Sector in the end. So that's how it got created. Then there was quite a lot of work around actually, setting up and animating the team. How do we split work during a CTF? How do we communicate during a CTF efficiently, and so on? And how do we keep players engaged, especially at the beginning, until we get everything rolling? So yeah, that's basically it.
Wouldn't that be I'm not that much into CTFing, but when you have like a fairly organized team, wouldn't it be difficult to uh, make sure that that person is doing their task and not like, oh, I can do this other thing that this other teammate is supposed to do? Like, how do you make people focus on the thing they're supposed to focus on?
So I think so. CTFs are kind of weird, because while you play as a team, right? Most of a CTF, most of one competition, actually everyone just does their own task and doesn't need any help, doesn't need to do to help anyone else. And then and during this phase, you basically need to make sure that there are not two players doing the same task without knowing about it. So if they cooperate, that's great. But if like one person is doing this task and another person is doing it also, but they don't know they're doing it, then that's just wasting time, right? So basically you need to make sure that doesn't happen. And then comes a point where all the easy tasks are basically solved, all the tasks which are in the comfort zone of all the players in your team are done, and folks start asking for collaboration. So you need a way to basically so that players can basically say, oh, I need help with this task, and others will find that, yeah, maybe they can help them. And yeah, at the end of a CTF, when there's usually just one or two tasks left which are unsolved, is like just the whole team basically thinks about that. Obviously it's a little bit different with attack defense CTFs, but we play mostly draw party, I guess, in the end.
Awesome. That also answered my second question. What's your favorite type of CTFs?
Yes, I guess that
Uh,
answers. But it's I guess one thing to mention here is that Jeopardy-style CTFs are just more common, right? If you look at CTF time, there's like 100 Jeopardy-style CTFs during a year, and how many attack defense? Maybe 5?
Hmm.
So there isn't... I would love to play more attack defense CTFs, but there's just not enough training ground, basically.
No, true, true. When you're playing Jeopardy style, it's fairly easy to train up to them and be prepared to say, but when you're
Yeah,
having attack defense, it's like you're saying.
that's a totally different game. Yeah.
Mm. Let's see. The next question is, have you encountered any legal issues while doing research? If so, can you talk about it and share the story?
No, I don't think I can share any stories because there were some cases, quite interesting cases actually, but I'm under an NDA from all the companies I basically worked for. But I guess it's like every time in pen testing or like research, sometimes you have to chat with lawyers, and that's pretty normal. I guess like in a 10 or 20 years, I can actually gather everything up and make a talk out of this. But on the other hand, there was nothing really dramatic anytime, so I don't think even the stories I could tell you would be any fun.
So it wouldn't be like, oh, I accidentally hacked the entire company and it was leaked on 4chan or something similar.
No, no.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Um, the next question is, what do you think about learning platforms such as HackTheBox? Are they counterproductive or actually making people more security aware?
I'm not really familiar with the learning aspects of HackTheBox, so yeah, I'm sorry. I kinda know what is it about, and I do have scheduled for some time now to look at this stuff, but yeah, I'm sorry. But in all honesty, like to answer the general question, anything that gets you to think about security is a good thing. So yeah, this includes, I guess, HTB, right?
Yeah,
And it's totally not counterproductive. Yeah.
that's true. It's true. HackTheBox has also like a fairly decent platform to get started on different things like Pwn challenges or crypto, or even like full root challenges, which is like the entirety of the lab. For those who
Hmm.
didn't know that, who's also in this Discord. um, let's see. The next question is, how did you come up with your name?
Uh, okay, so that's actually a question for the channel. Where does my first name come from? Gynvael. Maybe somebody will figure out. I can tell you the story behind it, though. Long story short, I did mention that I play games. I also played like tabletop games, for example, RPGs, role-playing games, tabletop. And I usually was the game master, so I was leading the adventure, but it came to a point where I wanted to play as well, and I needed a name for my character. So I started looking at my favorite fantasy books, I guess, for the name. So that's how I first came up with my first name. And then there is this fantasy series called Dragonlance, and every character there basically had a forename like two pieces put together, usually one adjective. For example, like Flint, Fireforge, or Storm, Brightblade. And I said, I like Coldwind, sounds decent. So now I have a forename as well. So that's basically it. I needed it for my like playing RPGs. Yeah, from Uriel basically got it. It's at Gynvael from Witcher. It was the name of one of the cities in the second book, actually.
Cool. Um, I'm sorry if a lot of the questions are the same to say, but it's good to have some what's called repeated questions, so people, if they kind of missed a question or something, they get it repeated, or if they didn't pay enough attention.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's fine.
yeah. So our next question is, who/what inspired you to make a YouTube channel?
Oh, wow. Okay. The honest answer is I don't remember, because that was, I started making videos when I was still in a previous company, so that was 10 years ago.
Whoa.
And so it's, I mean, even before that, I was publishing some content, and I didn't have, there were no video live streams back then, but we did have some. I had a channel with lectures live on our IRC channel, just text stuff with images. So I guess like moving into videos was quite a natural way to progress. I guess that's one thing. And the other thing, I did see folks around me starting doing videos on security. So yeah, I basically joined them.
And also a related question to YouTube is, who's your favorite YouTuber and why is it Live Overflow?
Because Life Overflow is amazing. I mean, totally check out his videos. Um, Apart from that, it's a good question. So actually, depending on what kind of content you're asking about, if it's about security content, then there are quite a lot of amazing people, like starting with Life Overflow, for example, or uh, John Hammond, right? And also there are a lot of good live streamers like Mormos and I guess a bunch of other folks as well, right? So that's the security part. Apart from that, I do have some YouTubers I just like to watch, which make videos about games, for example, or about how games work, like retro game mechanics and so on. So, and there are some Polish channels I enjoy as well about games, like aren.eu. Well, if there's anyone who understands Polish, then they might want to check it out.
Yeah, like you're almost always in the mood to watch security related stuff. So personally, I'm watching a guy named Cody's Lab, which is doing a lot with bees, which is actually kind of interesting.
Oh yeah, Cody is amazing as well.
Yeah. Same with games as well. Like I like to watch RuneScape because I don't know, it's been a game I've played since I was a little kid. Uh,
I played it as well. It was fun.
it's a lot of fun. Uh, so yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I
The
also enjoy like Linus tech tips. I know it's not like super technical content, but the way he presents is just so enjoyable.
And he's so nice as well. Like he has this open persona as well. Like always.
Yeah, and lively. I totally enjoy Linus.
Yeah. Have you seen his other channels as well? The channel Super Fun and those things?
Not really. I only follow his main one.
Ah, okay, okay.
I probably should check it out then.
Well, they haven't posted in a while. It's kind of a dead channel, but it's like with Dennis or like the editors, they're like having fun. It's kind of fun.
Okay, I think I saw like at least one video from the other folks.
Awesome. Uh, Also, chat, feel free to ask any questions and we will definitely answer them. So don't be shy. Our next question is, do you read XKCD? If so, which one is your favorite?
The answer is of course. Now, which one is my favorite? Uh, uh, Rubber Hose Cryptography, was that from XKCD? I'm pretty sure. Yeah, totally. I'm going to give you a link on the chat. That's one of my favorite comics, which is applicable to security.
I'll save that for later. Let's see. Oh, I thought it was like a book series. I was like unfamiliar with it until I actually saw it. Cool. So our next question is, how was your journey with hack? Wait, let me reformulate that. How was your journey with hacking? Well, I don't think I can pronounce this and reformulate it.
Okay, how your journey with hacking looked like in the beginning. So basically, I guess the question is about when I started, right? Then what were my first steps and
Yeah,
and so
that
on.
sounds
But that's
like
how I
it.
interpret it. Okay,
Yeah.
so trying to answer that question if I get it correctly. It's actually a good question. Like, so at the beginning, it was mostly like war games for me, mostly like trying to solve some tasks. And after some time, I started looking into the basics of buffer overflows and how that works, but I didn't know too much assembly. And then so actually, we mentioned already RuneScape, right? But before RuneScape, I played Ultima Online, which is one of the first MMORPGs with like nice graphical art ever.
Hmm.
And so I played that, and I was a little bit curious how the network protocol worked. So I coded a proxy, but the proxy was super slow and laggy. So in the end, I decided I need to learn some reverse engineering to be able to even understand what was going on and not having a lag. And because like Wireshark for Windows was not available at that time.
Hmm.
Now I will just use that. So so I started learning reverse engineering. I never actually modified the Ultima's client to include anything resembling a logging proxy, but yeah, whatever. And sometime after that, I guess I started working at an antivirus company, which basically polished my reverse engineering skills. And and also I started picking up some web security, like backend security at that time, and crypto and so on and so on. Everything basically like started rolling a snowball effect, I would say.
Hmm. That's cool. What was the name of the antivirus company you worked for, if I heard you correctly?
It's actually a Polish one, so I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's called Arkabit, and there's a story between MKS, which is another Polish antivirus, quite an old one, quite a classic, I would call it. And
Hmm.
like basically the folks which worked at that company moved to create Arkabit around like I guess a year before I started working for them.
Cool. And if you feel like I'm talking too fast or anything like that, or if anything is unclear, please let me know so I can rephrase myself.
Totally. Don't worry, but you're clear and I can hear you good.
Okay, that's good. The next question is, or goes as following. Hi, Gynvael. My question is the following. Do you recognize/embrace perspective that machine learning and the blockchain have in InfoSec? For example, a malware analyst with, uh, mm, oh God, my screen isn't big enough to read this thing. Give me a second. That
Sure.
was, that was a long one. For example, malware analyst with ML or integrity verification with blockchain. So,
Um, So my position on like is like this. For machine learning, we as the security community are basically trying to determine what is it good for. There are quite a lot of papers which are coming out currently. So if you follow basically the publications on the scene on the security scene, then you can basically see that folks are trying to figure out what can we do with machine learning, and there are some ideas here and there that it might be good for like fuzzing, it might be good for static analysis, it might be good for like side channels or whatever. So that's one thing. And the other thing is the blockchain, which I guess is more about the cryptocurrency. It's not tightly tied to security, but there are some security aspects of how the blockchain itself works, of course. My position on it is that basically these two areas are just two new. I'm going to use the word algorithm in case of blockchain, and I guess a family of algorithms in case of machine learning that were added to security, and we're trying to think what they can be useful for. But um, I'm not too focused on them in all honesty. So yeah, it's just like nice additions of blockchain and like Bitcoin, for example. I read the original paper. I really liked it. The security, sorry, the technical part of it, how it was thought out. That was a beautiful piece of technology. Basically, I really liked it. Machine learning is more of a it's actually how do you call it? Um,
It's
It's a
a
heuristic. It's basically a heuristic, right? So it's not going to solve a problem. It can approximate a problem, or actually some family of problems. So we have to phrase the problems we have properly for machine learning, and think about it this way. I think it's cool to be interested in them. I don't see neither of them as being the solution to everything, as some companies put it.
hmm,
But yeah, they are still important things and quite developing as well, especially machine learning.
machine learning is a really cool topic. It's super. It's like like an enormous subject, and I don't even know like enough to tell you that it is a big one. It just
Yeah,
is.
yeah, that's true. That's true. And we are finally getting the computing power to use it properly. I guess I kind of looked into neural networks and so on when I was on my university years back. But back then it was cool trick, but that's about it. But currently, with TensorFlow being available, with you can even buy USB-free accelerators for machine learning purposes, but you can use with embedded devices. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
really cool.
this is a great time to live in if you're into AI and machine learning. I'm super curious to read like papers in 5 years about how machine learning is being applied to security. In 5 years, I'm pretty sure there's going to be some really good research and leaps.
Mm. Uh, One of my lecturers at the university I'm going to, he wrote a thing about machine learning and malware analysts, actually. Uh, I think it will be published, maybe. I don't know. Uh,
Cool.
Not
Yeah,
quite,
I'm
yeah.
really curious about it.
Yeah, well, from my understanding of the paper at least, is they were able to gather maybe 30 gigabytes worth of malware, and they somehow managed to identify malware and non-malware based on that sample data, which was kind of funny.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and it wasn't even signature based like you usually would find in typical antivirus softwares. So I don't know. If I'll find the article, I will definitely link it to you.
Yeah, yeah, please do.
The next question is, what would you say are the requirements to get a job within the cybersecurity field?
Okay, so you have to be good in cybersecurity.
I mean, other than that, like, do you need to be good at programming or?
So, okay, it's basically like this. Um, the security field is pretty huge, right? Because you have like forensics on one side, then you have web security client side, then you have the web security backends, then you have low level security, very, very, very low level security as in IoT or embedded security. And then you have network security, then you have like blue teams, red teams, and so on. So, and malware analysts and abuse and prevention and so on. So security is a huge field. Depending on which exactly parts of that security field are interesting for the given person, then I could recommend knowing different things, right? For example, the closest to my heart has always been security research, low level security research. So for that, I would totally recommend knowing programming. Without programming, you cannot go through further than a certain level, because in security research you must create most of your own tools, which means if you cannot program, you cannot create tools, and yeah, everything falls down. So programming, and I usually recommend knowing two languages. It doesn't matter really which languages, but one language should be for coding fast and efficient things that need to do calculations, for example. For example, it can be C++, it can be Rust, it can be whatever is compiled and optimized in a decent way, even Java, I guess. Um, and then the other language, which is fast to code in, for example, Python or Ruby. I personally use Python and C++ as my favorite pair. And then, well, since this is low level research, you probably need some kind of assembly knowledge and reverse engineering. Usually x86, ARM is also the next thing. Then risk 5 starts to appear in various things. If you're more into IoT, Internet of Things, you might be looking also on AVR architecture or some other like MIPS, PPC, and whatever. So yeah, very much the answer to this question very much depends on what field of security you're exactly interested in, right?
Yeah, it's a perfectly good answer. Let's say I want to work with doing penetration testing because that's super cool. You get to hack all the things and be super cool in the company, right? What would you
Mhm.
say would be required to have like a degree like OSCP or being CISP certified or anything similar like that?
So yeah, certificates are a different thing, right? And certificates in our field are basically non really needed, not really needed. Apart from if you want to find a job, as for example in a pen testing company or a consulting company, which can likes to show certificates to their clients because their clients like certificates, or you want to land a job, for example, in a bank or some more old school company which basically cares about certificates. But in most cases, certificates are not really needed in our field. So that's my take on it. What is needed is the skills, I guess, which, well, you can have a discussion if a certificate proves that one has the skills or if one can just pass the certificate, but that doesn't matter, right? What matters if you have the skills regardless of certificate, of having the certificate or not having it, then which skills would that be for pen testing? And pen testing is a really nice mix of first having good knowledge on the most popular technologies and quite wide knowledge at that, right? Because you have to know, like, for example, Java pages, which are usually found in corporations. Some corporations prefer ASP. Um, with .NET technologies, other prefer PHP for some reason. So you need to know these on the server side. You need to know some client side technology. You need to probably know some social engineering at that. You need to know how to create a decent covert channel to basically set up a command and control after you get and backdoor basically some machines in the corporation or firm you're pen testing.
Mm.
So you need to know that, and then there are all the other things which are non-standard, and you have to quickly learn them, right? Because this, for example, this company is using this technology, which is super uncommon everywhere else. But yeah, you have like 1 week to do the pen test, so now you have to become an expert overnight, to quote Iron Man, in this particular field. So yeah, this is a good skill to have in pen testing, like being able to quickly jump between technologies.
Yeah, some people will say it would be like the same as being the first line as in a service desk company, where you like to do the initial checks and all that thing, and you pass it along to the experts with the different fields that they're experts in.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. Yeah, I guess another thing about the pen testing is that you also need to have a certain let's call it, there's the management part of a job, right? You cannot, for example, spend too much time on this avenue where you believe there might be a bug which might be potentially high impact, when there are, like, for example, 10 IPs on the network still untested at all. So, and then you have to properly explain it to the client, be able to basically write it in a report in a way the client can fix the network and fix the servers. They know how to secure themselves.
Mm.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, he actually prefer writing the reports than actually doing the engagement. I think that's kind of funny because from my perspective, I don't really like writing. I like to do stuff, you know.
Yeah,
So
but it's great to have people on both sides, right? I mean, to have a person who prefers writing, and then maybe you can spend more time hacking, and yeah, just ask the person if they enjoy writing, then maybe they can write about this bug and that bug.
yeah, exactly. Our next question is, or we can keep talking about this if you guys ask questions in the chat. But the next one is, do you have a degree from the university or anything?
I have a so-called engineering degree. It's I guess an equivalent of a bachelor's degree from the Wrocław University of Technology. I started doing my master's, but like halfway, I decided that, which is kind of ironic, but I decided that my university is taking time off my research, and I prefer to just focus on my research. So
How
yeah,
ironic.
yeah, it was a good decision on my side.
Yeah,
But I was already working for several years in the industry back then, so yeah, easy choice.
yeah, that's an easy choice.
Yeah, but that being said, um, it's good to have a degree. It's not required in security, right? It's if you already can land a job when you're 18, then yeah, it's then you actually have a choice of not getting a degree, I guess. Otherwise, I would totally recommend getting one because just getting a degree gives you time to focus to learn more things on your own as well.
Hmm, that's true, and you also, uh, well, it's also a good thing to fall back on if something should happen with your current job. So, say you're 35 and you lost your job because the company went bankrupt or anything like that, and suddenly you don't have anyone to vouch for you unless the degree you got on college or university or anything like that.
So actually, most companies, most good companies, right? If you see the job description, they say requirements, master's degree or equivalent in like experience, in job experience.
Hmm.
So if you're 35, you probably already have multiple years, right, in the job in
Yeah,
the
of
industry
course.
anyway. So it just evens out.
Next question, which is, do you have any scheduled conference talks this year? Like, are you going to attend Confidence or Black Hat EU?
So this year is basically a year where I'm not attending that many conferences, not giving so many lectures. I tried to like this is basically the second year I'm doing this because yeah, otherwise I find myself basically in a plane all the time or preparing presentations all the time, not focusing on my research. And in the end, I would like to play with some research and then be able to present it, of course, next year. So this is a break year basically for me, which means I'm presenting next week in Portugal, in Lisbon, for on Synfo, then in Krakow a week after that on Sekurak Mega Hacking Party, and then probably at the end of the year on Poning, which is a Polish conference I co-organize. But I will be skipping Confidence this year. Confidence is a quite big conference, like over 1,000 people in Poland. A pretty good one with English talks, so I totally recommend going. I actually am in the panel for that conference, so I know the talks are good. Yeah, sorry.
Shameless brag right there.
Yeah, shameless brag. No, actually, the panel is quite amazing. So even if I wouldn't be there, that talks would still be pretty good and quite a lot of good speakers as well. So, so yeah, but only these three things I have planned for this year.
That's
Oh, and I will be in on Insomni Hack because there is a CTF there in Geneva, which is
oh,
the biggest offline CTF in, I don't know, probably in Europe, maybe in the whole world. There are like usually 400 people playing it on site.
that's a you need to be qualified to be able to go there in the
No,
first
no,
place,
no.
right? Oh,
It's
okay.
it's open. You just register.
Oh, might do that.
Yeah, it's actually really amazing. So I totally recommend it. It's one of my favorite CTFs.
All right, next one is
Okay, well, I might be biased because we won it at least 5 times, so I might be biased here. I'm
maybe a little
sorry.
biased. Next question is a little bit long, so bear with me. What do you think about new exploitation mitigation strategies such as shadow stack, CFI, and pointer authentication? Do you expect the binary exploiting? Oh, come on. Do you expect the binary exploitation will become significantly harder due to them? Do you think they will have a small enough performance impact to be widely used? And do you think techniques will be developed to bypass them? Oh,
Uh, a
that's a
long
mouthful.
question. So it's a good question. It's like this. I cannot comment on every implementation of these techniques. They will make things harder. The question is for how long and whether the scene will, develop counter mitigations, right? For example, well, back in the days, right, you have just plain old buffer overflow on the stack, and then folks came and said, yeah, let's make stack cookies or stack canaries, and then let's make ASLR, and let's make the stack non-executable. But if each of these actually proved that after folks discovered a technique which allows them to bypass it, it was just bypassable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but that being said, both what the stack canaries achieved and what basically the ASLR achieved is you need additional bugs to be able to get through exploitation. Well, back in the days, you needed just one bug, and now you need maybe a leak to get the address. Maybe you need a leak to be able to leak a cookie, or maybe some special kind of bug to be able to jump over the cookie. And I believe it will be the same for these bugs, like especially like CFI is kind of a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
Shadow stack on x86 similar. Pointer authentication, well, it has been for a couple of years, I guess. But in the end, we'll see. Let's basically meet in 5 years and check whether it actually whether actually new techniques were developed to counter mitigate these. I'm curious. I think it will add some time to exploitation, but in the end, these are only mitigations. What we need in security, we need to basically get rid of classes of bugs and not mitigate their effects, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because in the end, there still might be bugs which, yeah, CFI, great, like Shadow Stack, great, but yeah, I have this random write into JIT memory, which is both writable and executable, and I can just redirect the IP there, and none of whatever was mentioned here matters anymore anyway. So, well, CFI might matter a little. So, yeah, well, okay, not really in case of JIT, but it gets technical, right? And we'll see. There still will be bugs which are not really mitigated by this. I'm more actually happy when stuff like Rust language or Go language are being developed, which are both on the fast side, on the native side, but are memory safe at the same time. And this will basically allow you to create code which doesn't have these bugs, which we create the mitigation after mitigation after mitigation in case of C and C++ to deal with. And yeah.
Mm.
So that's basically it. I'm happy that new mitigations are being present. I don't believe they will solve the issues.
Well, I'll reschedule a meeting in 5 years so we can have a new AMA then.
Yeah, perfect. I totally hope I will be wrong on my, well, predicaments, and this will actually solve security.
Awesome. The next question is, we're getting a little short on time here, so we need to take the remaining 10 questions or so. So the next question is, do you have any thoughts about the new Docker escape?
Which one is it? I actually don't know which one is the new Docker escape. I saw a Kubernetes escape yesterday, but not sure about the Docker escape.
I think that's the one he's referring to.
I didn't see the details yet. I'm not sure if all the details are published. The exploit is going to be published on the 18th, and I'm looking forward towards that. Well, actually, that bug was discovered by 2 members of Dragon Sector, so I'm really curious about the details too, based on that.
All right, that's a really good answer actually. What would you suggest?
Okay. Oh, so there's another one. Okay, I just saw the link on the chat, so let's see. Okay, so it seems there are quite a lot of container escapes nowadays, because I was thinking about a different one which appeared yesterday. I believe that's a different CV though. And this one appeared today. Okay. No, it's this one. It's this one. It's the one I was thinking about. Never mind. I'm getting confused about CV numbers. You just can't remember all the CVs anymore.
You can't remember all the CVs?
Yeah. I'm not saying you couldn't back in the day, but they did have to increase the number of digits to 6 last year, right?
Yeah. What do you think about the system, by the way, on submitting CVs? Like, some people think it's a real hassle, like it takes a long time and it's a real pain in the butt.
So actually, my experience with it has been pretty positive. So yeah, I'm not complaining. But your mileage might vary.
Yeah, of course. Um, yeah. Another question here is, do you play any Hack the Box, or do you intend to do it in the future?
I guess I already mentioned it.
Yeah.
It's I have it planned, but I didn't play yet.
Have you gotten past the register part?
No, but I have a friend who is actually let's say running reconnaissance for me on this front.
Ooh,
So yeah, um, you know, I'm kind of busy, so I tend to rely on other people more and more. It's actually something I'm still learning to do.
yeah. Let's see. Do you have a favorite music genre, or how you never pronounce that?
So I guess my taste is pretty eclectic. I mean, I like a lot of things. My personal preferences in the end run around heavy metal and like dubstep, which is a weird mix. I do know that. But apart from that, like any good music is, I will like it if it's good. So it's not limited to that.
Yeah, I totally agree because a lot of people have this impression that you can only listen to one genre and you have to dedicate yourself to that one thing. But as long as you're enjoying the music that are being played, then I don't really see an issue here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, actually, most of the folks I know are like listening to various things and not limiting themselves. But I remember when I was younger, I also tended to limit myself, which isn't a good thing in the end.
No, no. Yeah, there's a lot of good music out there. Like, recently, I've been picking up on a little bit of metal myself, but I've always been like a electro dubstep guy. Um, but yeah,
Hmm.
it's good with some variation.
Yeah.
Uh, our next question here is, what would you consider to be the best way to study reverse engineering?
The best ways to study reverse engineering is reverse engineering. As in, yeah, sorry. I know this is kind of non-answer, but it's like this from my perspective, right? You should devote at least 70 to 80% time on actually doing the thing you want to study. So if you want to study reverse engineering, then open IDA or like free IDA or whatever you have, Binary Ninja or Radari 2, and start reading the binary, start reversing it as in actually, trying to manually change the code in assembly and write pseudocode in C or actual code in C or Python, which does exactly the same thing. And this is a good exercise. And do a lot of that and get more and more complicated things, get things which start to fight against you, start, have some obfuscations and anti-reverse engineering, anti-debugging tricks. Try to also sometimes use the debugger to understand things, sometimes try to not use it and emulate everything on a piece of paper. But yeah, in the end, focus on reverse engineering if you want to do reverse engineering. There is, I'm afraid there is like no cheating here. You actually have to devote a lot of time to be fluent in reverse engineering. And yeah, like don't be afraid to do that. Just yeah. And apart from that, there is like 10% of the time you can watch other people do it. Pick up basically their workshop, right? Look how somebody who is good in reverse engineering, how do they do it? Well, what tricks do they use? What maybe what methodology do they have? And the other 10% can go to reading books about it, to tutorials and so on. But the core of the work is always what do it, just like reverse something.
Yeah, I have a really good channel for those who want to watch some reversing. Uh, it's in the AMA channel, so check.
Yeah, but well, in all honesty, I rarely do any reverse engineering on my channel because I have like 1.5 hour to 2 hour live streams, and reversing takes a lot of time.
yeah, true. Live Overflow does some reversing though, which is also interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I would totally recommend checking out his channel more because he has like 10-minute videos basically, which have the gist of it in already in there. You don't have to watch like 2 hours how somebody does it. Though there is some sense in doing that as well because you pick up more tricks then.
Yeah. Let's see. Would you recommend going to a college, or would you be better on learning your own? Kind of answered
Uh,
this previously, but
yeah, both. If it's like this, unless you are 100% sure that you can land a job, or actually you already have a job when finishing high school, or whatever is the equivalent of high school in your country, then go to a college or university or whatever, and because that gives you more time, and it also shows you different things than only the thing you want to learn. But during that time, focus on the thing you want to learn. The college should be, extra to what you're learning on your own. And I think that's actually a decent recipe for doing like learning stuff.
yeah, totally agree. Our next question is from the chat actually. Do you prefer Intel or AT&T syntax?
Intel, totally.
Well, who wouldn't agree? Like Intel, come on. It's great. And also the next question, also from the chat, is do you use Radara 2? And what's your opinion on it?
Yeah, so not really. I have it on my to-do list to learn it someday, but the user experience and user interface is a little scary for me. And I've used IDA for years, so Radar is something new for me, which I don't really have to learn. I can learn for my pleasure or for so I can talk about it on my live streams, but that's about it. So I don't really have high pressure to use it. But yeah, it's there on my list to learn it at some point.
Cool. I'll look forward to that stream. uh, let's see. Have you ever done some bug bounties before?
Yeah, and actually from both sides. When I joined Google, the Google VRP program, vulnerability research program, was just starting. So I was both on the receiving end, replying to emails and filing back with the teams and making sure that the reports are valid. And also outside of Google, I did some reporting with bug bounties. Not a lot, yeah, but I got some back out of it. It was actually quite fun. One thing I can recommend to folks, it's not really related to bug bounties, it's related to like security research in general, is like don't overestimate the severity of your bug. This is a mistake I've done at the beginning of my career, saying that, yeah, something which obviously I would say now is like medium priority, probably not really severe. I tended to say, yeah, this is critical, fix it tomorrow. So yeah, just remember about it, think about it with a cool mind, basically, and always compare the vulnerability which you have found to a 0-day for OpenSSH that you tap enter and it gives you root with 100% chance. And yeah, and mark your vulnerability according to that being the critical vulnerability in real world.
Cool. I'm actually nodding like, yeah, this is you're so right. I've been encountering this myself at work when you're reporting bugs. Um,
You have to learn it, right? It's pretty normal. You aren't born calibrated to this stuff unless you have seen the worst bugs and the mech bugs. There's no other way to calibrate yourself. So this is normal. I wouldn't really stress about it, but it's something to keep in mind. And also remember when writing bug reports that on the other side there will be a human, and a technical engineer at that. So just explain like you would explain to another engineer the bug with all the details they need, and that actually speeds up the process greatly usually.
yeah, couldn't agree more. Um, Our next question is, who is your favorite band and why is it Amity Affections? I think I said it correctly.
Uh, yeah, so my apologies. It's actually not that, it's Iron Maiden.
Uh, I was actually going to an Iron Maiden concert in 2012, I think. They were in Norway at the time, so I was
Ah,
lucky.
that's cool.
Yeah, I'm not really a fan, but it was a really good experience for sure.
I'm always missing them. Like, they come to Switzerland with a concert and I'm away on some conference, so yeah, no luck so far.
Uh, um, our next and final question on our list actually is how to crack air-gapped computers.
Ah, that is an excellent question, actually, right?
Yeah.
And I do not have a good answer because the answer is usually really, really, really case specific. As in, is that really an air gapped computer? Maybe there is some protocol between that computer and the other computer, or maybe there is an engineer who connects a pen drive to one and then a pen drive to the other. So it is a good question. I do not have a generic answer for you. My apologies.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, but there is no like 0 day for air-gapped computers, as far as I know, unless the other air-gapped computer is something which has a voice interface. I keep remembering the bug in Windows Vista when it came out and had enabled something which, like, resembling current voice assistants. You tell it the command and it just executed it. So yeah, in Vista, you played a WAV file on some website and it executed the command in your operating system. So, but that was quickly patched and only at the beginning. So yeah.
oh well.
Oh well.
Um, does anyone else have any questions in the chat? Any last questions? This is your chance.
Did we answer all the questions from the list?
Yeah, I think we got all of them, even the repeated ones.
Uh, this one we didn't answer 26.
26. Oh yeah, yeah. At what
Unless you
age?
want to skip it.
We can take it if you like.
Yeah, okay, we can go for it.
So the question is, at what age did you start? What do you think about starting at older age? For instance, 27.
Um, yeah. So I started when I was 6. So that was ages ago, and it's like this. It doesn't really matter at what age you start. My take on it is there is some like a myth basically that children learn faster, right? But and that is true to some extent, but security and programming, these are pretty abstract concepts, and actually like an adult mind, in my opinion, is better at handling than a mind of a child. At least that was in my case. The case in my case, it took me years to understand some concepts in programming and security, but uh, yeah, one thing that the child does have is basically time, as in they don't have to get to work, they don't have to um, earn money to basically make sure the family is living on a decent standard and so on. So yeah, if you have time, then yeah, totally. Older age, 27. 27 isn't so old, by the way. Anyway, whatever age you are at, you can totally start, and that's fine. Just keep in mind that it will take you some time before you can reach the level where you can get a decent job in this. And especially if you're like, we're specializing in some different thing, and now you're switching to, for example, to security, then you're starting again from a pre-junior position and you have to learn first the basic stuff until you reach the junior level. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But on the other hand, security is fun and it is enjoyable. So yeah, go for it.
Yeah, and especially when you have to like catch up and like be on the same level as everyone else, and like all the new things that are coming in is always interesting. It's like a always new field to say, like from my experience at least.
Yeah. Yeah, and in the end, it's not a game about catching up with everyone else, right? It's like being good enough for whatever is the purpose you're learning this. So yeah, sometimes it's a mistake that folks make. Like for example, they say, "Oh, I'm not going to be as good as El Camtap is. Like that guy is amazing." But in the end, it's not really about that, right? So yeah, don't like despair too much about that. Just focus on what you want to achieve.
Yeah, it's true. Unless your goal is to be as good or equal or even on the best on CTF time.
Oh yeah, but yeah, but that's competitive thinking. That's something else.
uh, did I miss any questions? You want to go over the list?
Mm,
Is there anything you would like to add? Anything you would like to say or anything like that?
let me look at the chat. What do I do in my free time except gaming? I guess I already answered that question at the beginning.
Yeah.
What is your opinion about selling exploits? Yeah, I'm not a fan about for selling exploits. I really like vulnerability reward programs and bug bounties from the manufacturers or maintainers of a given piece of software or hardware, but yeah, I'm not really a fan of selling exploits because yeah, in the end you never know what the exploit is being used for, and it might not always be nice things. Why do you prefer Sublime to Vim? I did use Vim for a long time, but Sublime is a little bit easier for me to use. That's basically it.
And it looks a little bit better as well, doesn't it?
A little bit, but I guess you can configure Vim, like at least in my case, the theme I'm using is basically identical. Sublime isn't limited for like you can add some graphical capabilities, I believe, to it as well. Where Vim, you are basically and GVim at that, you were stuck with text buffer, emulated text buffer in the end anyway.
Mm-mm. True.
Tiling window manager versus regular window manager. Regular, actually, because I use Windows 10.
Oh, I have a question for you. Um, do you prefer Windows 7 over Windows 10? Even
Yeah, I prefer, in all honesty, I prefer 7, but I recognize that Windows 10 has a lot of improvements, especially on the security and performance side. So I'm using Windows 10, but from the UI perspective, I totally preferred Windows 7.
Yeah, I totally agree. Let's see. How do you turn off Cortana?
Yeah, you can disable it if you fight hard enough. Why Windows 10? Actually, because I always was a DOS/Windows person. I'm using like Linux on every server I have, but for a desktop PC, I always preferred Windows. That's just a personal preference. I mean, Linux is pretty cool. I just never found a taste for it, and I was already years into Windows before I got my first Linux.
What do you think about the new Polish cyber army?
I don't know the details, but it sounded interesting. Yeah, that's the only thing I can say.
If you had the opportunity and the pay was okay, would you like try to attempt to join it or?
I don't really live even in Poland, so probably no. They probably would prefer folks who are actually living in Poland. So yeah.
True.
Uh, do I have any experience with Mac OS? Actually, a little. I I have like a post or two about some reverse engineering on Mac on my blog, and I have a bug or two which I found on in like the core libraries, but that was kind of by accident. But everything I know about macOS is outdated by around 10 years. So yeah, that's about it. Sorry. I've heard it's a really interesting platform to research actually.
Isn't it running an older kernel as well? Like,
Sorry?
isn't it running an older kernel as well?
I have no idea.
Me neither. Last question from One Musk. Do you prefer security versus freedom?
Oh, this kind of question. It's a good question. I would love to have a balance somewhere there, a decent balance.
Mm.
Yeah, but probably I'm more on the freedom side.
How do you qualify this balance? Ooh.
Yeah, it's a great question, but it's actually you should we should ask the experts about it. And I'm totally not an expert in this field. I handle technical security and not really security policies, especially on national levels. But yeah, I value my privacy and I value everyone's right to privacy in the end. So that's why I say I'm more on the freedom side.
Cool. I'll think we'll call it a wrap if you like.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for wanting to join this AMA. Hope you would like to do it in the future, hopefully within 5 years.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. It was a lot of fun and really great questions. So yeah, see you in 5 years then.
Yep, see you in 5 years.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. See you.
See you.
Bye bye, everyone.